Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And now coming to the next part of this Azure Active Directory Beginners to Professional series. Now what exactly we are going to talk about in this video? We will be taking a domain naming system or DNS, basically the custom domains we can say. That part we'll be taking it, and a couple of other new concepts that we can see. What else, like the registration of devices, what are the hybrid devices, what are the hybrid Azure AD devices and all. So that part we can take it out uh, in this video. If you have not seen the previous video of this series, you may take the link from the description box. The previous as well as the next video link will be there in this description box, as well as the entire series link for Azure Active Directory Beginners to Professional series. Okay, so let's come to the domain name. And while adding a domain name in the Azure Active Directory, as we know that whenever we purchase services from the Microsoft, either it would be related to the Microsoft 365 or it would be related to Azure Active Directory, always you will be getting a default domain name, and the default domain name is on Microsoft.com. So what exactly it will do? On Microsoft.com is a default domain name which is associated whenever you purchase any domain services, whereas the first part, that is basically selected by you while you are purchasing the services. Normally in the organizations, what you have seen that my organization is abc.com. For example, Google, Microsoft.com, Google.com, we have a IBM.com. A lot of more organizations are there. They have their own independent domains. If I want to use that particular domain, like my organization is abc.com, and I want that the user's identities must belongs to abc.com. Like by default, if I take it over here as an example, it's a fabricum.onmicrosoft.com. So what will happen? A user one at the rate fabricum.onmicrosoft.com. That will be the UPN, user principal name, for the identity or for the user account, we can say. Right. I want to use the username as user1 at abc.com. This is my organization, so I want to utilize that name. If you want to use that particular name abc.com, you have to add your own custom domain in Azure Active Directory. How we can do that? We have a option custom domains. You have to go to that location and you have to add a custom domain over there. Once you click on that, then you can able to add your own custom domain. You can add the multiple custom domains, that is also possible. For example, I have a abc.com, I have a xyz.com. If I want to add a subdomain as well, that is again possible, like subdomain, for example, sub1.sub.abc.com, infra at abc.com, anything that is belongs to you. The how once you are adding a domain, then how Microsoft recognize that you are the owner of that particular domain. So whenever you are adding a domain, you have to create one record, and that is a txt record that you have to create, and that txt record will always ensure the ownership of your domain. So Microsoft will gives you a value, and on the basis of that particular value you have to create a text record, that is txt record, and on the basis of that txt record, your domain authentication, or you can say the validation of your domain, will be verified. So on the basis of that, your domain will be authenticated or verified once you create a txt record. By default, you will be getting on Microsoft.com as a domain. Sorry, it's clicked away. So by default, you will be getting a on Microsoft.com, and apart from that, what else? Somehow it's clicked away. Okay, now it's back. So on Microsoft.com is your default domain. You can add the custom domains, number of custom domains, whatever number you can add it. Whenever you are adding a subdomain, make sure that you must have a root domain available for the same. For example, if I need to add infra at abc.com, so abc.com is my root domain. First I need to ensure that this domain must be added, then only you can add the subdomain. So this part you have to take care. Let's take a look in the portal how it's basically added, or how it's available to add it. Once you go to the Azure Active Directory portal, you can see this is my Active Directory portal, whereas you can see there's an option of custom domains. Earlier we clicked on the users groups that we have seen. Now we can see it, custom domain names. When I clicked on this, my default domain that is displayed over here, it is my default custom domain. And once you click on any of the domain or the domain that is added, it's a primary domain. It's not a federated one because it's not syncing from the on-premises. We can see the number of resources that are associated with this particular domain. Let's go back on the custom domain section. Once I clicked on the custom domain, I can click on add custom domain here. When I clicked on that, I need to type the name of my domain, whatever the domain I want to add. That domain must be purchased from any domain naming service provider. For example, GoDaddy, any domain naming service registration provider, you can purchase the name. And once you assign it, then at the next level you can see there's a message is also displayed, necessary sign-in credentials to update the DNS record. So when I will add that domain, and just I clicked on the add domain. You can see there are certain options. They're asking about to create an MX record or create a TXT record. So when I clicked on the TXT record, you can see for the root, I have to create a record. MS is equal to this as an ID. This is the TTL value, time to live value. And once now I need to open my domain naming or DNS portals, or wherever we have hosted the DNS services, I need to open that portal. I have to give the create this record. I have to create this record, that is txt type record, along with this value. And once I did that, then I need to click on verify. So it will verify that particular domain. If I go back, right now I haven't verified that, and I just go back, you can see that it's getting failed because I have not created the record for abc.com, and obviously I do not have a abc.com ownership at this moment. So once this status is become verified, or once this domain become verified, that will be available. Right now it's not verified, so you can, once I do that, then I can again go for the verification, and then I can able to assign this domain to the users. So let me just go back and see on the users, or we can say, let me just show you for the users. If I click on this user account, any user identity, so here I cannot change the domain right now, but once I have a trusted domain available, I can assign this, I can replace this part as well, or I can change the verified domain whatever I have. Or let me just show you one more thing over here. If I go in the users, if I click on the new user, create new user, okay, here you can see the number of domains that are available. So right now I do not have a second domain as a verified one. Otherwise, if I have a verified user, then I can verified domain, then I can simply add that particular domain here, or we can say a select domain here and put the user details and the namings. Microsoft 365 domain, if I go on the portal.microsoft.com, here also I have an option to configure Microsoft 365 domain as well. That will be again only limited to the particular 365 services, and that will again push back to Azure Active Directory, because all these both are integrated with each other. As I go in the settings, you can see the domains are there. From here also I can add another domain. Here you can see the incomplete setup because I did that here for abc.com in Azure portal, but that is again integrated with M365, so I can also see it over here. From here also I can start the setup and complete the setup for my domain as well. So both ways I can verify my domain, both ways I can add my domain, and both ways it can be integrated for the services as well. So these are the two methods to add any domain, or we can say method to add any custom domain. If be specific on the custom domain section, so that you can do it. Let's move ahead and see what else we are going to cover up. Okay, now coming to the Azure AD registered devices. What are the Azure AD registered devices? Okay, so let's move ahead on this and see Azure AD registered devices. What exactly the Azure AD registered devices are? So mainly the Azure AD registered devices that are basically uh, signed by using a Microsoft account, which is based on the like Windows 10 devices or Android or might be a Mac OS, any type of device that basically use the Microsoft Azure AD account to sign in. For example, if this is my laptop, if I want to sign in with on this laptop by using Azure AD credential, my credentials that are exist on the cloud here, and from this user identity, if I want to sign in with this device, we have to register this system to Azure Active Directory as well. If in the corporate environment, what happened earlier, once we have a Windows, or we can say a ADS, that is Windows Active Directory domain services. So we have a domain controller and all the computer accounts that are basically associated to that Active Directory. Whenever user, whatever the user account you create in Active Directory, they can able to log in any of the machine that is hosted in this Active Directory environment. Now once the design, or we can say a era is changed and moved into the cloud, what we have to do, we have to register these devices in Azure Active Directory. So earlier we have to create the computer account in domain at domain controller or Active Directory, that is in the on premises. Now we have to register all the devices or that devices in Azure Active Directory. So once we register those devices, we can able to sign in by using a Microsoft account, and that account is mainly related to the Azure Active Directory or hosted in the Azure Active Directory. We also have a mobile device management, or we can say a Intune, Microsoft Intune services that basically help us to manage the mobile devices, like the devices that are registered in the Azure Active Directory. So that device management part I will be covering up at later stage. Once we move on MDM in details, we can see over that. Here what we are going to see it, what we are going to check it out over here. Here we are just thinking how we can register the device to Azure Active Directory. There's a concept BYOD is also introduced nowadays. Bring your own device. If you have your own laptop, if you have your own mobile phone, that you can also register in the Azure Active Directory, and that can be managed by using these MDM policies as well. So benefit is that in the organization you can able to access the resources. For example, once you register your mobile in Azure Active Directory, then you can able to access the corporate's emails or organization emails. The supported platforms, Windows 10 and 11 is also supported, iOS, Android, and the Mac OS. So these all are type of devices you can onboard. Even though if you have a Windows 7 or 8.1 or the previous version of Windows devices, that also can be onboarded, but there's a different way. It's called an hybrid Azure AD, where you can integrate those devices and onboard those devices as well. Okay. So Azure AD joint devices, once we register the device, we can see that we can enroll it. Let me just go back on the first part. Here what we have, we are creating accounts and using an Azure Active Directory. So that was the one section, or we can say a one part, where we are registering your devices and we can able to access it. Now if I want to use my device as a onboarding, so that was the registration process, this is now an onboarding process. So what we were doing, let me just go back on this part. Here we are creating an account and registering, or we can say adding computer account in the Azure, in the normal Windows Server Active Directory. The same pattern, same way we can onboard or we can join my device to Azure Active Directory as well. So here the account will be created for this device in the Azure Active Directory, and that would be the organization own devices, just like we have a on-prem AD devices. In the previous section, we have seen that we are registering the device in the Azure Active Directory to access the resources. That would be controlled by using MDM policies. Sorry. That was controlled by using MDM policies. Here. Now, what we are doing, we are joining that device to Azure Active Directory. That will create an account, and it's just similar as we are using an Azure Active Directory domain, Active Directory domain service, which is your Microsoft normal Windows account. Home version is not supported. You can apply now the conditional access policies to those devices as well. Here you can join the only device to Azure AD, and the organizational account required to be sign in. That is your like your domain UPN name, that is username, for example user1 at abc.com. So the similar ways you can sign in to the cloud hosted device, or we can say a joint device. Whereas if we have a previous version like Windows 7, Windows 8.1, similar kind of devices, that is again possible. You can integrate it with the on-premises AD. And this is the scenario once you have some devices are hosted, or we can say are created in the Azure AD, and some of them are exist in the on-premises AD. We may take both scenarios, like both way scenarios. For example, the Azure Active Directory along with on-premises Active Directory. So both scenarios can be possible to create a domain name, to create a domain environment. Whereas in the hybrid, once we have this type of scenario, we can onboard the previous version devices as well that are basically not supported in the Azure AD direct joinings. Here we can also use the Windows, or we can say a normal group policies to manage the devices as well. Okay, so how we can onboard the device, I will show you the step and the activity as well at later on, how we can onboard along with the MDM policies. So I will cover up that part along with the same. Whereas there are certain user settings as well that you have to do it while you are creating and onboarding the devices, or you are registering your devices in the cloud. You require a certain user configurations or the user settings as well. So as we were talking about at the initial level regarding the user settings or the user configuration, so what we can do it, or what are the settings that we can see for the specific users. Like we have seen the simple user configurations, but apart from that, what else the user specific properties are there. Here you can see the app registrations. User can register the applications, administrative portal access. You want to give them they can able to access portal.azure.com, or they will not be able to access it. Then link the LinkedIn accounts connectivity, that are you are allowing or you are restricting. External users access, that we will also see that how you can control, or what the level of configuration you wanted to restrict or control. So let's just take a look in the same configuration what we have. If I go to the Azure Active Directory, and if I click on the user setting from this left side, you can see this option is there. When I click on that, you can see the app registration, whereas if you click on this uh, explanatory mark icon, or we can say information mark icon, you can see here I can block, I can allow to access, whereas for the admin portal, if I want to restrict or I want to block it, whereas LinkedIn connections, that you want to allow it for the selected group, or you don't want, that can be restricted as well. Whereas what are the external manage external collaboration settings, that once you click on the same, let me just go back on my screen once again. Okay, so what exactly you can manage it for the external users? The external users restrictions are mainly users you want to allow it for organization or you don't want to allow it. The level of restrictions for the guest user accounts along with their invitation sent, who can able to send or invite the external users so they can be integrated in your organization, or they can able to access the resources. For example, I've just giving you an example on the same. Like we have a Teams, Microsoft Teams as a service, and whereas the Teams, I am trying to include one external partner in my Teams channel, so that would be joined as a guest. They will be a permanent member for the specific channel. They will be getting an updates and information from the organization, but still they do not have an appropriate user identity in the organization. They will have only limited guest level access in your organization. So if you want to set up those type of configuration for the users who can able to send, who can just uh, invite the users, what level of guest users, they will be getting restricted level access. They will get the same as, you can see the users have the same access as the members have. So these type of level of access, or we can say a level of security, that and the permissions that you are allowing for external users, that we can also set it up. From where we can set, we have to just go back on the same location, like in the user setting. Once I click on the user setting, you can see the manage external users. If I click on the same, we can also set up these configurations. Limited access to properties and the membership. Most restrictive, their own directory objects only. Anyone can organization can invite members, users, and the user assigned to a specific admin role can invite. So this is the better permission that you can set it up. Enable the guest self-service sign-in via user flow. That will be leave it as a no, because I don't want to do that. External user, leave the setting, yes, and allow invitation to be sent to any domain. Here, if I want to restrict it, suppose I have a limited domain, then I can allow it to the specific target domains, like our business partners, uh, the organization where I want that the settings, set up a domain where I want to invite as a guest users in my organization. So that would be a this is the recommended permissions that you can set it up. Here you have to just type the name of that particular domain and add that domain here. Whereas if I want to deny for a specific one, I can select it like that only. This is not a recommended to allow send to any domain. That is not a, until unless you are open domain, or you are working for the organization that required to connect with any other domains. So let's just go back on the user settings. Let me discard it, that setting, because I don't want to set up right now. Whereas certain user feature settings that you can also see it from here, and here you can allow the map, my apps, combination app registration. We can put it the selected group for the users as well. Administrator can access my stuff, so that is also possible. That I will show you what exactly this my app access and the permissions once we move out in the users feature discussions. We'll cover up that section at later stage in the upcoming videos. Definitely I will be covering up the entire Azure Active Directory sections. So here, this is what we can set up for the user level settings, or the user level configuration for the internal as well as for the external users. Moving ahead on the same, we can see the tenant properties. The tenant properties is basically related to the information about your Azure Active Directory tenant, where you can define the location, you can see the technical context, tenant ID, privacy, URLs, statement. So let me just quickly switch back to the portal. When you open this Microsoft Azure Active Directory, your portal, you can see there's a properties button from the left side. And once you click on that properties button, you can see the name of your tenant that you can also change it. For example, Quantoso Marketing is written over here. If I want to change it to the Quantoso Limited, I can simply change it. But it's will just an information that is displaying on the portal. Whereas the location for the data center, you can also see it, location on the country where your tenant exists. Notification language, you can also want to change it. That can be possible to change it. Tenant ID, that you can see it. Even I have opened that because right now it's a trial tenant and will be getting expired soon. So then technical contact details, but make sure this tenant ID, always keep it as a confidential whilever you are opening. You can add the privacy statements, global privacy contacts, all those informations you can add it in the organization. So manage security defaults, I will be covering up at later stage what exactly the security defaults are there and why we use in the organization. So let me I just change that, and once I click on the save, this will be changed to Quantoso Limited. You can see it now. So from here you can change your tenant specific properties, or we can say configurations. This is the setting that we have seen, that the setting of the tenant-wide properties. Okay, coming to the Azure B2B scenarios, Azure Active Directory, we have a B2B users as well. So the B2B users are mainly your guest account users or your partner accounts that you are trying to onboard in your organization, because they wanted to they want some access with some services, some interaction with your organization. So on the basis of that prospect, we can do it. We can integrate those B2B user accounts in my organization. Once I integrate those B2B accounts, so their authentication is not based on Microsoft. It's basically based on the third party or the any other service provider. For example, you can see the Facebook, LinkedIn, any other Azure Active Directory, all those things. When I send an invite to the user from my directory, and whenever they are trying to access the services like your on-premises or might be your cloud applications, anything, so they have to validate their multi-factor authentication strategy. How it will be authenticating? For example, I want to use the Gmail account. I have just sent an invite to a Gmail ID, user1 @gmail.com. That account as a B2B account is added in my organization. Now, how will I authenticate the Gmail account? So what I have to do, whenever user is trying to access from this user ID, there would be a code sent to their Gmail account. The code will be sent to that particular Gmail ID. Let me just go back. Okay, so what exactly happened? The code will be sent to that Gmail ID or a Hotmail ID or any other Facebook ID anywhere. So now it's getting clicked over. So once the code is sent to that particular Gmail account, user check the code from that account and put the code in the Microsoft portal. Once the code is successfully validated, like it's matched, and the identity is authenticated from that particular code, then user can able to access the resources. So we can simply say that the authentication is mainly depend on the external identity provider. Could be a Gmail, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything can be possible. So the external users can able to access in your organizations, or we can say the guest IDs that can able to access your resources or your organization resources. These are the certain states, or we can say certain scenarios. Guest user account can be an external Azure AD accounts. It can be a Microsoft account. It can be a on-premises Active Directory account, or guest account can exist in the organization Azure Active Directory. Cloud only accounts. So these are the certain scenarios, or we can say situations where, as you can see, the collaboration of Azure Active Directories accounts for guest users and identities. How to add the guest users to the Active Directory? You have to go to the same portal. Okay, that is your Azure Active Directory portal. Go to the users. From here, you can see the new user option is there. Here we can also have an option of invite guest user. So this or these options will be getting changed sometime, so that like Microsoft is time to time updating this. Like earlier we can see the new guest user option is like that, but now it's updated in the form invite external user. Once I click on the invite external user, here I need to put the name, I need to put the email ID and the details. So the email ID is the compulsion over here. For example, abc@gmail.com. I can simply invite that particular account, and this mail will send to particular ID. Obviously, it will be getting failed because I haven't. This account might be exist, might not be exist, but I do not have access to that particular account. Whereas, let me just create another account. Okay, user is successfully invited. Here also we can send a bulk invite. If I want to use the CSV file, I can use this bulk invite option as well. That particular user account, it will actually not send an email to that particular ID, as the ID is not exist. So what we can do, we can, for the testing purpose, we can create a simple Hotmail account or a Gmail account and send an invite to that particular email ID. You will be getting an email to onboard the user in your organization directory. Let's move ahead and see what else we are going to check it out here. Okay, we can also use the Google as an identity service provider. That can be used to signing through a Gmail or a Google services. We also have a Facebook as an identity provider. So with the Facebook identity provider, we have to use the client ID, or we have to use the client's secrets. With the help of that, we can able to sign in Azure Active Directory. That is basically mainly used on API based, and you require a Facebook developer account as well. So that will gives you a client ID and the client secrets. With the help of that, you can able to integrate as an identity provider Facebook. So this is all about till now in this video, and in the next video I will be taking care the mainly concept on the Azure Active Directory AD Connect, as well as authentication methods, what is the difference, how it can work. So all these things I will be covering up in the next video. So if you have not subscribed this channel, please do subscribe it, and the entire series list is again listed in the description box, so you can take the list from the same, as well as for the next and the previous video links would be there. So thank you so much for watching this series and this video. I will be sharing the next part soon. Thank you.